All right. Hello, everyone, and how are you? I hope this podcast finds you breathing, eating, sanitizing, sleeping well. My name is Wanjiru Nguhe, and welcome to Mine is a Comment. And this is a podcast that hosts women so that we can talk about our lives and how different decisions, practices, and ideas across this country and continent sit in our lives and in our bodies. Today we're about to have a very, very, very interesting and very personal conversation. I am joined by a friend of mine who I met on some streets, the blue streets. Her name is Anne. She's a feminist researcher, she's a writer, and she operates at the intersections of media and social change. She's mostly interested in how women and non-men are using social media for activism and institutional accountability. She also has a cat called Cleo. Me, I have a cat called Puskat. Um, she's a very radical feminist, and thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Yes. Karibu sana to Mine is a Comment. And she's here because today we want to talk about mental health. And we're not going to talk about mental health like as a statistics or how it's talked about in the news or numbers of how many people are doing this and that and the other. No. We're going to talk about mental health and how it affects our bodies and how it sits in our bodies. Because if you look at in the medical field, normally when they're discussing illnesses, they don't discuss illnesses while focusing on women's bodies.
Yes.
Illnesses are usually discussed in white male bodies.
Exactly.
So today we're going to have the conversation on how does mental health affect us? How does it sit in our bodies? What triggers it? Are we triggered by, is it a DNA thing? Is it Uhuru's economy? Is it, what happens? Yeah. So you've been very vocal about your mental health journey.
I have.
You've been very public and honest about living with ADHD, living with autism, living with the depressions. I like to call them the depressions. I don't know if it's a proper thing to call them, and also anxiety, right? So maybe the first thing I will ask is, what are these things? Like, what does it? When you say you're living with these things, what are they? What is autism? Because there's a way we think autism is. And then there's a way it actually is.
Yes.
So, like, what are these things? What is depression, anxiety, ADHD, and also autism? Yeah.
Okay. So in my case, I have all four.
Yeah.
I have autism, I have ADHD, and a lot of the time that comes with depression and anxiety. So autism is actually a spectrum. The full name of it is Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. So
Okay.
it ranges from one end of the spectrum where you have those who are nonverbal, they have extreme reactions to, sensory triggers like sound or
Yeah.
pain, to the other end of the spectrum, where people like to call them functional autistics. I don't like that term because all of them come with certain restrictions and limitations.
Yeah.
So autism essentially it's a disorder that affects the way we behave and the way we communicate with people compared to the way society expects you to behave and communicate with people. And it unfortunately tends to be at odds with ADHD, which is more about hyperactivity and impulsivity.
Okay. So when you say ADHD, what is
ADHD.
ADHD?
Oh, sorry. ADHD is attention hyperactive deficit disorder. Sorry, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It
Okay.
used to be called ADD, attention deficit disorder, but
Yeah.
they added the hyperactive
All right.
part of it. So people tend to be, as it says, hyperactive and impulsive in their behavior.
Okay.
Yes. Then depression and anxiety are mood disorders. So depression it's more, you're down in the doldrums, feelings of sadness, feelings of worry, while anxiety sometimes can present as the opposite. It can be intense feelings of fear, or when you say you have butterflies in your stomach, you're feeling you're feeling you can't
Like your
sit
stomach
down.
is running, but it's not
Yes,
running.
exactly.
Yeah,
That kind of thing. That is anxiety, more or less. Yes.
Okay. And you've mentioned what they are and what they mean. How do they have a feeling? Of course, anxiety has a feeling.
Depression has a feeling.
ADHD.
ADHD.
Are you like a bunny, Easter bunny, energizer bunny?
Now, this is actually why fewer women than men get diagnosed with ADHD, because when they talk about hyperactivity, it's the assumption that it is physical hyperactivity. You know, the way this boy can't sit down, he's on this couch, he's there. But that's not necessarily the case with girls, especially because the way girls are socialized. So our hyperactivity tends to be mental rather than physical.
Yes.
You know, when you have so many racing thoughts in your head, sometimes you have voices in your head. You feel like there's 3, 5, 10, 100 people speaking in your head.
Yeah.
A lot of the time for girls, that's how it presents itself. It also presents itself in impulse decision making. So, you know,
Oh my God.
if we die, we die.
I feel like I'm hosting someone to drag me on my own show.
Like I did when I bought this dress and I said, you know, pesa itarudi.
But the dress is beautiful. It was worth it.
Thank you.
I am encouraging your impulse.
Yes. So it can be physical and it can be mental.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
And are there any triggers? Are there triggers? Is it predisposed? Is it a genetic thing? Is it like, how do you come to, I don't even know if I'm asking it right, but are there any triggers?
Yes, definitely. There are triggers. The jury is still out there, especially for autism and ADHD, on the causes of them. So it's not very clear. However, people do get triggered by life events. It can be triggered by stress. So what we call them episodes. So you can have an episode of anxiety. You can have an episode of depression. Or if you have ADHD, an episode of impulsivity that is triggered by certain things. It can be triggered by stress. It can be triggered by a change in routine. It can be triggered by sensory stimulation. Very bright lights can trigger them.
Or very bright colors.
Noises can trigger them. Some people, it can be touch. Either they don't like to be touched at all, or they don't like to be touched by people who are not familiar to them. So everybody has different triggers, but at the same time, in some cases like depression and ADHD, it can be genetic.
That's what I was going to ask now, like the origin. Does it just come from nowhere? Are you breathing air and then, I don't know, the air does something?
So in some cases, you'll find children of people who have ADHD and autism, children of people who are predisposed to depression and anxiety are more likely to be predisposed to the same conditions. So a lot of the time, if you find children with these conditions, look at their parents. They might even be undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. And you'll notice certain, you know, and you say, I get these things from my father, or I get these things from my mother. Yes.
That's what is going on.
That's what's going on. Yes.
Okay, let's talk about your journey to finding out that, okay, I am not just sensitive to things. I'm not just impulsive. There's nothing, I'm not just like this. So what was in Kenya we say diagonized. Diagonized. So how was your diagnosis journey like? Was it something that happened or,
Mine has been a long journey, over a decade long, especially in the case of autism, where I was seeking therapy when I was in university. So I studied quite far from home. I was feeling homesick. And at some point, my therapist mentioned that, you know, I suspect you might be on the spectrum. And she told me, it would help to see a psychiatrist, and she referred me to one, but it was quite expensive. I was a broke college student, so I didn't quite follow it up. And again, I knew in my mind what someone with autism or someone on the autism spectrum looks like.
This is the
thanks
thing.
to the media. I knew they don't speak, they don't like to be touched.
So in your mind, you're just like, I can't be autistic. What do you mean?
And I was like, I'm a functional human being. What do you mean? Then sometime in 2017, my sister mentioned it, and she was like, you know, I suspect from certain habits you had as a child, have you ever considered a diagnosis? And that's when I started researching into autism. I still didn't seek a diagnosis until this year, actually.
For real?
Yes.
In this year of the porridge of our Lord.
Yes. In this year of the porridge of our Lord is when I spoke to my psychiatrist. I'd been seeing a psychiatrist for a whole year before I spoke to him and said, hey, might we consider checking into autism and ADHD? And right off the bat, he was like, I see where you're coming from and I see these traits.
This whole time he was just waiting for you to get to
it. Yes.
Yeah.
So he spoke with my therapist and I was given an evaluation. So it's an online evaluation where they test for certain behaviors. So you just fill in an online form. And my diagnosis came back. I'm on the autism spectrum. I have ADHD, but we had actually been treating for depression and anxiety from last year because I had presented with the symptoms. And for a lot of people, it starts from there. It starts from, especially for women, because we tend to more be into ourselves and we have traits of depression and anxiety, and that's what they start treating before you see people talking about these things, about autism, about ADHD, and you're thinking, why are you talking about me? And then you decide, hey, because that's what happened for me. People on Twitter would be talking about this, and I'm thinking, just at me next time.
Or if you're stalking me, just tell me.
Exactly.
Don't go around.
Yeah, just tell me. And some of you are my friends. Why are you talking about my life? These are private things.
Right?
Yeah. And so I sought an official diagnosis and it came back to what I was thinking it was.
All right. And were you scared? Or you were just like, okay. It also depends with the way the information was broken down to you.
I was a bit scared.
Yeah.
Ironically, I was thinking, what if it comes back and I have these things? And I was really scared. And yet I was seeking them because I thought I do have
those
but
things,
it's one thing to think and it's another thing to be told that, yes, this is true. So we have to start managing it.
Yeah.
Especially because these are things that essentially you have to manage for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So part of you is hoping that you're wrong. But the other part of me was about relief because, you've grown up thinking you're broken. There's something wrong with you, but if you can have something that can explain it, that can therefore be managed, then there's a sense of relief because, hey, there's, I'm not broken. I'm just different in certain ways.
I just need help that other people probably don't.
Yes. And if you help me in 1, 2, 3 ways, then we are good to go and we can all live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I like when you mentioned about women, expressing depression differently from men, because when you hear the news, whenever a man is violent, it's the men are suffering. Let's have a safe space for men. And so I just want to ask you, when it comes to depression, ADHD, autism, and anxiety, how does it sit in your female body? Not your Kenyan body, not your black body, but your female body. So we are talking about the sexual part of you, the reproductive part of you, just especially that. And also, we can start there. It's like I've rehearsed.
No, it's these are things that I'm still exploring, especially because I know I'm not physically hyperactive.
Okay.
I'm barely physically active. Oh my goodness. I live a senile lifestyle when I'm not cycling or swimming. But I tend to be very inward. My sister says as a child, I used to play with myself a lot and I had a lot of imaginary friends, which now I realize were the voices in my head. I do hear voices in my head, which I discovered is not a normal thing from my psychiatrist.
It's not normal?
Apparently not. Well, it's not, let's not call it normal. I don't like to use that word.
Okay.
It's not common. It does not present commonly in a lot of people. And so I realized, wow, that's a me thing and a few of us thing, I guess. And so a lot of things started making sense. The way I'm constantly talking to myself, aka the voices in my head, some of the self-stimulatory actions that I make, so self-stimulation are just these actions or words or sounds that we repeat. You'll find there's those people who shake their legs a lot. I have a ball at work, a stress ball that someone gave me that I squeeze a lot. You'll find people who doodle when they're thinking.
Ring, so you're just
yes,
constantly
you're twisting your ring, some of those things that I do. So I shake my leg a lot, and in my case, it's my right leg,
Okay,
my right
yeah.
foot to be precise. Then there's my stress ball, and I play with my hair a lot. So that's, in fact, I've started doing it in an updo
So
to
that
see
you
what
don't.
happens. And I actually want to take down the updo because it's really stressing me that I can't play with my hair all the time.
Oh,
I
gosh.
love my updos never last. I always tell myself I'll do an updo to avoid that, but maybe a week maximum, I'll take down the updo so that I can play with my hair.
Yeah.
I also realize I get into a lot, my depressive episodes are really major around my period.
Okay.
So I'll have about a week before my period, I'll be very active and I'll be very stimulated. Then my period will check in and I'll have a depressive episode. And sometimes that is described as just, those mood swings for periods.
Yeah, it's
But
just
I
PMS.
know
It's
mine
just
are not
PMS.
mood swings because even my medication reacts with my body differently around my menses
All right.
as it does the rest of the month. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about the medication and how does it affect you? Like, how does it affect you? I know some people have reported to have, like, it affects their libido. It affects
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yes.
But you've mentioned that
mine
in your
affected my libido tremendously. In fact, I tell people my libido went to war for the longest.
Yeah.
Though I also had my sex drive had been quite low for a number of years. And I
Yeah.
realized now, when I was diagnosed with depression last year, I realized that I had been in a very long depressive episode.
Wow.
But then when I got on my medication, then I had no libido whatsoever. At all. Like nothing was doing it for me sexually. I lost interest in a lot of the stuff I used to enjoy, like cycling and swimming and walking
Yeah.
and working out, which coincided with the time Corona came and our gym got closed. So
Yeah.
I just got into a slump.
Yeah.
And yet the irony is that this medication is supposed to help you get out of this depressive episode, but it ends up mimicking so many of the depression symptoms.
Yeah.
But at the same time, trying to allow you to function normally in a
Yeah.
normal world.
Yeah.
Which I wonder, like, is it worth it sometimes? I wonder.
Does this normal world deserve you?
Anyway. Yes, exactly. If it's such a high price to pay sometimes.
Yeah. And you had mentioned something about taking your medication twice during your when you're on your period.
Yes.
Because maybe you can explain that.
I realized actually through a friend of mine that my medication was less effective when I was on my period. So she just asked me, monitor yourself around your period and around ovulation and see your mood. So I started keeping a mood chart. So I kept a mood chart for about 3 months and I compared it because at least I used to track my periods on a period tracker and I would track my moods and all those other things, and I noticed that yes, my medication was less effective during my periods because my moods are also elevated,
and it's also a hormonal thing. So
exactly, my hormones are all over the place, they're unbalanced and so on and so forth. So I realized I had to take a double dose of my medication to also regulate my moods and my hormones.
And these are things we don't know.
We don't know.
You're just like, me, I'm feeling some type of way. Oh yeah, it's my period.
It is something I had to break down to my psychiatrist and be like, okay, this medication, I have to up the dose when I'm on my period. And he was like, oh, okay, tell me more about this. Yeah.
All right. And also, so what have you learned so far after your diagnosis? And especially, like, what would you tell women who are listening to you? Like, what should women know specifically about living with, mental, can I call them is it a mental illness or just mental
health issues?
Mental health issues, like what do women need to know specifically? Is there even space for women to break down mentally? Yeah.
We have to create these spaces for ourselves. And that's what I have done with my support system. We are predominantly a bunch of women who have these mental health issues. And the most important thing that we need to know ideally is that we are not broken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with us. We are just wired differently.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we require certain aids and we require certain help.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to seek help. So, getting a diagnosis itself was a big thing for me, and it's not something that's accessible to many people. It's very expensive. So just getting the ADHD diagnosis alone cost me over 20,000 shillings. And that's outside of the consultation fee, that's outside of the medication. So what happens if you can't get an official diagnosis, but you've done a self-diagnosis? I'd like people to know that self-diagnosis is also valid as long as as long as medical diagnosis or professional diagnosis is not easily accessible to the rest of us. And I'd like people to know that, we are out there and we are looking to form communities and we are welcome to form our own communities with the people around us.
And what do women need to pay attention to?
We need to pay attention to our bodies because we have a habit of ignoring our bodies when they're speaking to us.
And gaslighting our own bodies.
Yes, I gaslit myself for the longest time before my diagnosis. Even after my diagnosis, sometimes I gaslight myself and I say, is this really, are you sure?
Are we just lazy?
Yes, am I just lazy? Or am I just unfocused?
Or am I just not qualified for this
thing? Exactly,
am I just, and I hate to use this word, or am I just not getting it? Am I stupid?
Exactly.
Am I just not? What is happening?
So we need to stop gaslighting ourselves, listen to our minds, listen to our bodies, and most importantly, get our minds and our bodies in tune and in sync with each other.
But that is something we don't know how to do because you're multitasking.
Exactly.
No, especially if you're a mom and you're a wife and you have all these responsibilities. When are you going to sit down and listen to your body?
It's such an unfortunate thing.
It is. All right. Another thing you've mentioned community, and there's this thing that people like to say, especially when the media does this thing of we have 500 suicide cases. It's a serious thing, and then now you hear, oh, you should just reach out. But how possible? Like, what does the community need to know? I think we'll start with reaching in because I don't think you can reach out when you're in the deep of deeps. It's practically impossible to reach out when you're not even like presently there in your mind.
Yes.
So what do we need to know about reaching in? So as the community, how do we reach out to you and ask how can we support you, especially when you're really battling, you're really fighting your hardest in your mind?
I think, first of all, it's important to educate ourselves on the signs and symptoms of these episodes, whether it's a depressive episode, whether it's a manic episode where somebody is hyperactive, so that we can know that, oh, this person seems to be going through a depressive episode. So you reach out to them, reach into them and ask, how can I help you at this time? Or how can I be of service to you at this time? And I like something we talked about earlier that you said, people can have sort of mood boards or something they write
like
down.
An SOS 101.
An SOS 101 that you can tap into whenever this person has a problem. I don't have a written one, but I do know my friends know, especially when I stop posting on social media, then they know to look for me because I'm a social media junkie.
You are.
So if they don't see me on social media even for 2-3 days, then they reach out. They're like, hey, or sometimes they even know the way I post. So I will write something on social media and a friend of mine will reach out and they'll say, I've seen a post of yours and is everything okay? Or they'll just outright come and say, I don't think you're okay. Because sometimes you don't even know you're okay yourself. So you need somebody who can look at you and know you and say, and I don't think you're okay. Yes, can I help you? And it can be something as simple as that. It can be something once you understand how to help them as well. It can be paying for their mental health bills. It can be helping them do their shopping. It can be helping them clean their house.
Or just sitting in silence
with them. Or helping them, try and do the normal things that they love, that they used to enjoy, that they are no longer doing.
And also, you've talked about reaching out. And so how do we, and then also, I was going to ask, how do we know when you're reaching out? But you've already talked about that. And then there are also things we say that we shouldn't say. There are things we do that we shouldn't do.
Yes.
So what are the things that, number one, we need to stop saying, especially with regards to depression, autism, even suicidal tendencies, like people who are, predisposed. Like when you have suicidal thoughts currently, what should we not say or what should we not do?
we shouldn't make it about ourselves. So when somebody is in distress,
Yeah.
don't make it about you, and don't start telling them how, I'll be sad if you die or you kill yourself.
Yeah.
Your mother will feel a certain way,
Yeah.
because it's not about us.
Yeah.
And they know that you'll be sad,
Yeah.
but they're suffering themselves.
Yeah.
So stop making it about you, and when you reach in or out, ask them, how can I help you
Yeah.
make things better? What
Yeah.
can I do for you right now? How would you like to be helped? Not, I will feel bad if you do 1, 2, 3. It actually makes things worse.
Life is there's profound beauty in this.
Exactly. So if me
Yeah.
being here or doing these things makes you feel bad, then I'll take myself out of the equation.
Yeah.
Maybe permanently, maybe temporarily,
Yeah.
whatever that means to me. So don't make it about yourself. And also, it's very important for us to stop associating mental health with violence the way that we do. Every single time somebody commits an act of violence, they were suffering from mental health. Statistically speaking, most mental health patients are actually not violent.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, they are more likely to be victims of violence.
Yes.
So it really diminishes our ability to assist them
Yeah.
when we paint them as villains, as perpetrators of violence, when we are the ones who are more likely to
Yeah.
be victims of that violence.
Yeah.
So we really need to stop perpetuating those stereotypes. We need to stop perpetuating stereotypes of people being lazy,
Yeah.
being aggressive. You remember your report card when it would say, if only they applied themselves.
Mine was going to say, if only she focused.
Yes.
And stopped joking. I'm in class 6. What else am I supposed to do in class 6?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also that boundary between when is it childishness, when is it ADHD, when is
Yeah.
it autism, depression, anxiety
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's very important for us to understand that it is a mental health, keyword being health.
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
So let's stop talking about fight this thing. It's not a war. Okay.
The way we
It's
are fighting
mental
COVID.
health. Yes. We shouldn't be fighting these things.
Yeah.
Can we use the language of care?
Yes.
Not how
Yes.
can we fight the disease. It's
No,
how can we
support?
care
Yes.
for patients with this disease? How can
Yeah.
we support people with this disorder, people
Yeah.
with these mood swings,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I love everything you've said. I usually, I think I'm a walking undiagnosed. I usually read those messages and I'm just like, I think Twitter is tapping our phones, because how is this person talking about these things?
Absolutely valid.
It's very, I'm
Absolutely
just like,
valid.
this is not okay. Even now you're talking and I'm just thinking. Yeah, but thank you so much for coming.
No,
thank you for being
having me.
so brave, and thank you for opening even your social media space to talk about what you're going through, because
Sure.
you're not. Like I read and I feel like, oh, okay, it's not just so I'm normal. So I mean, I'm not. Yes, we're normal, but it's okay.
Yes.
So yes, and thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. So mine is a comment. This is now the comment for mine is a comment. Today is gratitude for all the people on social media, and herself, and other accounts that talk openly about their journey with ADHD. They talk about their journey with therapy. With therapy, going to a therapist and trying to understand their mental health situation. We have gotten the courage. Even for me, I've gotten the courage to do this podcast today, because I'm just like, this is not something that me myself I go through alone. This is something that it has been destigmatized. And I just really want to appreciate the people on social media who have helped to destigmatize mental health challenges. Personally, I live with an uncle who has had schizophrenia for as long as I can remember. And in his time, like 30 years ago, it was not as... it was very scary, even for my grandmother, even for me. I grew up seeing him. So when someone would mention mental health, my mind would just go to the schizophrenia that he has. But now, with the information that we have and the brave people who are on social media talking about it, I feel like a lot of destigmatization has been done. And thank you so much to everyone who is honest about their mental health journey and is honest about the medication, is honest and bold and even loving enough, because this is also a very loving community. So my comment is just to say thank you very much. Thank you for opening our eyes to what mental health looks like. Thank you for opening our eyes to understanding that there's actually help, there's a community, and there's support. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your journey with me. And thank you for being very honest about it, even and using your social media to talk about it and to talk about your life.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Anytime. And also you will be back to talk about something else that we've talked about. So just look out for
Gladly.
that. Yes. So this has been Mine is a Comment. Thank you so much for watching and for listening and for subscribing. For those of you who have not subscribed, the channel is Mine is a Comment on YouTube. Also follow me on Twitter at I am _Wanjiru. On Facebook, I am Wanjiru Nguhe. And on Instagram, it's also Wanjiru Nguhe. Thank you so much for the love and the comments and the recommendation. I appreciate it. Thank you.